I'm Brianna Rose with the Mill City Times, and I'm here today with Elaine Evans from the U of M Bee Lab. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here with you.
So, Elaine, you work for the U of M Bee Lab. I'd love to start out just by learning a bit about the work that you do there.
The University of Minnesota Bee Lab is part of the Department of Entomology here at the University of Minnesota, but we focus on everything bees. So we have two different professors that are here with research programs. Dr. Dan Caraveau focuses on native bees, and Dr. Marla Spivak focuses on honeybees. We also do a lot of outreach and education. There's a group called the Bee Squad that is all focused on helping people learn more about bees. I am an extension educator and researcher, so I travel kind of both worlds where I do research to try to learn what we can do to help conserve bees in terms of what they need for habitat. And also I do a lot of extension and outreach, talking to people to help them take action steps to help pollinators.
Well, speaking of pollinators, I'd like to talk about what exactly is a pollinator. I know that people most likely think bees, butterflies, but it's a bit more than just that, right?
It is, and it's an interesting category because it has more to do with what they're doing than who they are necessarily. So pollinators are animals that are moving pollen between plants to help them reproduce. So their definition is they're these connectors between the plant world and the animal world. And they're helping those plants to grow and thrive. It's about 80% of flowering plants out there in the world that are dependent on animals to move their pollen to be able to reproduce.
So, I mean, it sounds like they play a pretty important role. Why should human beings care about pollinators?
One of the first things we talk about is the impact with what is on your plate. Pollinators are responsible for about 1 out of every 3 bites of food on your plate. And not only that, but they tend to be responsible for the foods that are the most kind of nutrient dense, nutritious foods. So a lot of the fruits, the nuts, things like that, that really give us, so much nutritional benefit. A lot of what we eat, so the other 2/3, things like rice, corn, beans, things like that, are actually wind pollinated. But we clearly need a lot of these other foods to really have a whole complete diet. Besides what's on our plate, going back to that 80% of flowering plants depending on pollinators, if you just look out in the world, all the things that are dependent on these plants. So birds, just looking at what plants do for helping to filter our water, clean air, building soils, it becomes this really huge thing where it's not just about our food, it's about, the health of kind of this all of these different animals and plants that are interacting out there in the world, which we are a part of.
Yeah, it sounds like they touch on pretty much our entire ecosystem. So, how are pollinators doing right now?
It is actually kind of hard to know how a lot of the pollinators are doing. So it's a really diverse group. There are bees, butterflies, flies, wasps, beetles. Even just focusing on the bees, we really only know about a handful of bees in terms of how they're really doing. So honeybees are a managed bee in general. So maybe people are familiar with these kind of boxes of honeybees that you'll see out in a field. Beekeepers can open up those colonies, look inside, and see how the honeybees are doing. The bad news is that they're having a lot of health problems. So beekeepers are able to keep bees going, but they do lose a lot of colonies. All of these other bees that are out there, in Minnesota alone, we have 470 different species of bees. most of them, we don't really know how they're doing. Bumblebees, these big fuzzy ones, are a group that we know somewhat how they're doing. And unfortunately, they are not doing that well. About 1 out of every 3 different species of bumblebees are struggling. We have at least one bee here in Minnesota that has federal protection because we're concerned about them going extinct.
That's sad. Bumblebees are my favorite bee. And I had no idea that there were so many, 470 different species. Wow. So, what problems are facing pollinators? Like, why are they struggling?
Pollinators are facing a range of problems that end up interconnecting. So a lot of it goes back to habitat. So these pollinators need food to eat, which for them is flowers, and they also need places to live, which can vary from just kind of bare ground to dig into, to stems of plants, to just kind of undisturbed areas. So they're losing a lot of those places to live and food to eat. On top of that, there are pesticides in the environment that put extra pressure on them, that a lot of them directly kill pollinators, or they just reduce their health. There are problems with diseases and pathogens, and climate change is a big problem for pollinators too. So there are, extreme weather events like we're seeing more frequently with things like fires and floods, and it's clear to see how those are affecting every living thing. But in addition, just the temperature changes are hard for a lot of pollinators to adjust to. So a lot of them their ranges are shrinking. They're not able to live in as many places where they used to. So then those populations are declining as well.
Well, what can we do to help?
There are actions we can take on all of those fronts. One of the biggest things we can do is the habitat piece, because that kind of connects to everything. So planting more flowers is really important. So with all of those different kinds of bees, they are out at different times of the season and they need different flowers. Having a wide variety of native plants that you plant in your gardens or anywhere around farm fields can make a huge difference. And one thing that people may not think about when they hear about planting flowers are trees. So there are a lot of trees that are really important pollen sources in the early spring. So having a wide variety of plants blooming kind of all season from April through September is a huge difference, as well as leaving places for those bees to make their homes. So just kind of messy corners in your yards can be great places for those bees to set up. You can also take climate action. We know climate is making a big difference for pollinators and for the rest of us. So using clean energy sources, supporting sustainable agriculture, supporting regulations to help us meet our climate goals. Those are all really important steps. You can also help us keep track of all these different pollinators by simply taking photos of pollinators that you see visiting flowers in your garden and sharing them. There's a couple of resources there that you can use. One is called iNaturalist. You can have it as an app on your phone, or you can just log in on your computer, share any of the photos you have, and that is helping us know where some of these rare bees are. The last step is becoming a pollinator ambassador. So if you're getting excited about pollinators, you're starting to see them more and learn more about them, tell your friends and family, your coworkers, how important they are and what they can do to help. And here at the University of Minnesota, we have a program to help you. So we have these pollinator education toolkits that you can get through interlibrary loan or at extension research centers. there are digital resources to help you advocate for pollinators in your community.
Oh, Elaine, that there are so many things that we could all do right now, little steps and changes that we can make that could really add up and help our pollinators. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of this wonderful information.
Yeah, you're welcome. And, we all can make a big difference by just taking some simple steps. So I appreciate the concern.
Thank you.